Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
We're doing very well.
We just had a session on chainsaw safety.
Yeah.
Here's my chainsaw safety. I should have brought it out. Because of my condition, I still saw.
Okay.
But where I saw is like this. So I bring the pieces on my cookie. And believe it or not, I mean, all my weight is off of my inner core now.
Yeah.
And I can saw wood. I saw wood the other, a couple weeks ago for probably 6 or 8 hours.
Wow.
This is how I stack the green stuff. I'll coat it, stack it, label it, and then I cover it with the tarp. And as you can see, the tarps don't last very long. Usually every other year I replace them. But there's some more Osage orange, and that came from the Conestoga Country Club. Here's an interesting piece which came out of a longer piece. It's a piece of black walnut. Right there is a post. It was a porch post here down near Strasburg.
Oh, wow.
Solid black walnut. And they painted it.
Of course.
Which was even better because I didn't have to do anything to it. Again, most of this stuff people have brought me. My neighbor up here in the field, this is cherry he brought, just dropped it off. Right here is a sugar maple burl from Lancaster County Parks in Lancaster. This, I thought it was 4 foot. It's probably about 38 inches. I'm going to cut it up in pieces. Again, you know how burls are. You can't determine, it's difficult to see what it looks like. I'm going to make small, probably small boxes, small natural edge bowl, because the natural edge bowls will give you some really interesting outside edge pattern on it. But I've also been given 2 other large burls, even larger than that. I cut them apart and they were just filled with ants.
Yeah.
When I get it, first of all, I coat it, bring it out here, and I usually leave it lay unless I want something green for at least a year. Well, here, I have a couple different pieces. Here's a piece from New Mexico.
Oh, yeah?
That's a piece of cottonwood that I brought in from a mission trip. And again, I got permission from the Indians on the reservation, the Navajo. I did return a piece. Everything I get from somebody, I return a piece. And I returned a natural edge bowl from that. But that's a piece of wood. In fact, out there, it's really valued and treasured for the bark on it. If you can look at the bark. Now this is a young piece. The bark will get out maybe 2 inches, and they like to carve the bark.
Okay.
Just the bark itself.
Were you able to keep the natural edge on the
Oh
bark?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
The 2 pieces I brought, this and another one, they had cut them probably 6 months before, and it was for firewood to heat their house for the winter. And the cherry pieces, again, came from another cherry tree right out front of my property that I had cut down a year ago. Black walnut, that English walnut was grafted on it. In fact, I have a ton. I have an arbor friend who I'll come home at night and there's a pile of wood as large as my lawn tractor out there at night.
Oh, yeah?
Crazy. But that piece, and I'll show you when we go out back. There's black and white in it. And then this is just some walnut that he had brought along. The ash came from a church property up here off of 72. The ash trees were getting destroyed by. Yeah. This is a slab planer, and this cross piece fits across here, and this part holds my 3.5 horsepower router with a special bit. It's on like this, and you simply slide it back and forth across the cookies. And that works pretty well. They're going to be donated. They're going back to the church. They have an auction up there, and typically there's people in the church that have sentiments toward the grove where we have outdoor services in the summer, and I'm going to put legs on them. This is one of my stashes. A lot of historical wood, as you can see, black walnut from James Buchanan mansion. I did not date them when I got them. That's been about a year ago. Norway maple from the Stauffer mansion. Blue beech from the Conservancy, the Lancaster Conservancy. Red maple again from Wheatland. Red elm from Wheatland. As soon as I get it, I anchor seal. You'll see my pile out back.
Yeah.
I anchor seal it. I put it under a couple tarps, and then when I cut bowl blanks, I anchor seal it again.
Okay.
As you can see, I don't turn these daily. So, and this is dogwood. And this came from Bill Tatowski up in Harrisburg from the Blue Star Highway project. That's a piece that's left over yet. I did return 2 pieces to him. But you'll notice this has been anchor sealed twice on the end grain, but you'll notice how it checks. And I found that dogwood does that. Here's another interesting piece. I got this from Martin called me and Bob Good and I to go down to Pine Street, North Pine Street in Lancaster. He said, there's a piece of wood down here. I think the tree came from the Ukraine at one time. This is Carpathian walnut. At one time, an ambassador to Ukraine lived there. And the tree was, oh my, the tree was probably 40 inches in diameter. And Martin had cut it. And his supposition was that he had put a seed in his pocket and brought it back from Ukraine and planted it. And that was the result. But it's gorgeous wood, and it turns really, real nicely. But that's, that's most of my stuff. I have some walnut in here also from the James Buchanan mansion, some magnolia. Well, there you go. There's, I think, you may have gotten some, Doug, from that.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of the last pieces that of the walnut tree from the James Buchanan mansion.
So how do you decide which piece to turn next for crying out loud? Look at this. It's all looks beautiful.
It depends on the day. You know, I had a stroke 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it looks like I'm normal, but I'm not. And I never was normal.
Yeah.
But my left side, my inner core was destroyed.
Okay.
I exercise every morning. That's why I ask you folks not to come out before 9, because I do about an hour worth of exercise in the morning just so I can function during the day. And standing at the lathe is okay for about half an hour, then I have to sit down. I just come out and just pick a piece usually. And if I get tired of doing natural edge bowls, I'll do platters or whatever. I don't turn it to sell it. I just turn it for people. And if people want it, and usually that's how I turn. If somebody says, I'd like a bowl of whatever, or I'd like a platter, I'd like whatever, a box, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll come out and just get a piece. These are some of the pieces that are ready to be turned. I usually bring them in and get them acclimated, and because fall now and winter coming, I really am cognizant of the moisture level in the shop, and during the summer I air condition it, during the winter I heat it, and I like the moisture content to be between 50 and no higher than 60. These are just, again, some of the, this piece right here is a piece of Granny Smith, an apple. A friend of mine called me one morning and said, hey, I'm clearing out my apple orchard. I got some wood here. He's a wood turner also. I got some wood that you might be interested in.
That's a big apple tree.
That's for sure.
These are going to be platters. Some are going to be bowls, but you'll notice what I like to turn them with a screw in the chuck, so I can turn the foot on it real quickly, and that works pretty well. This says it's just beautiful. Now there are some pieces that I got that are much more darker. You know, are much more darker, completely dark, rather than having streaks. But by and large, it's a streaked wood like this. It's beautiful, and it turns relatively easy. This is something. A lot of people have a lot of things. I like a lot of things mobile in the shop because I move the stuff around. I like to use or try a lot of different tools. I like to sit my tools up so I can get them very easily. So I built this, but it works really well. And then I added some polypropylene holders that I made on the ends for different tools. I built this grinder base, and this is where I store my wood for my Christmas ornaments that I make. Some of the wood, as you can see, James Buchanan, magnolia from James Buchanan, the Stauffer Mansion. There's several different historical things in here, but again, this is a local maple, but pieces for bodies, pieces for finials. This is a burl. It's a cherry burl that a friend of mine gave. I can't read it because I think it's a piece of cherry from my son's house up in New Jersey. And this is actually that thick. It's about 1.5 inches, close to 2 inches thick. And that was green when I turned it down to 2 inches, wrapped it up in paper, and it's ready to be put back on the lathe. That one's been there for 2 years. Depends on a lot of things. If you read, it'll tell you 6 months you can do that. But if you have knots in it, if you have some real nice grain that comes from limbs and at the bottom of the trunk of a tree where the stress is, it takes really much longer than 6 months. So I like to leave them for at least a year, because most of the stuff that I turn that's green, I usually like it at the bottom of the tree trunk.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the stress is. I try to turn every day. As you can see, when you came here, we have a lot of yard work. So fall comes, the garden, I don't get as much, I'm not as productive as I once was, just because I can't stand as long. You know, I'm into history. This came from Mount Vernon. The day before we were there, they had a thunderstorm that had a lot of lightning.
Oh, yeah.
And it knocked some large trees down. I tried to get a piece, which, you know, you can't, because they do with the historical stuff. But I asked them if I could have that piece. Yeah, you can take that piece. This bowl I did during the virus. In fact, this was a twice-turned bowl. I turned it about 1 inch before finishing, and I stored it, wrapped it up in newspaper for about a year. And then during the shutdown and the virus, I turned it, and it's a piece of ash from Long's Park. Flaming ash. It's gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
The finish on that is brushed on lacquer. I like brushed on lacquer I prefer it over spray simply because I can put 4 coats on it, brushed on it. It's pretty heavy. I mean, it's much heavier than 4 coats of spray on. And then when I buff it, before I buff it, I leave it sit at least a week to cure, at least a week, sometimes 2 weeks, depends. It's a piece of spalted white birch that a friend of mine who was in the club lived over near Ephrata. He's since passed away. And then the ornaments, different ornaments.
Is that your specialty?
Yeah, a lot of people want those, yeah. This is from the South China Sea, the South China Sea, ebony. And again, with this larger ornament, I'll show you another one as well. With these sea urchins, I put a skewer, barbecue skewer. I drill a hole in the finial, drill a hole in the top finial, and put them together. And again, I press them just snug because of the fragileness of the sea urchin. Most of them that I make, I think I did this presentation at the club. Maybe I didn't. I did at the Harrisburg Club, Susquehanna Club. This is an inside-out turning where you use 3 pieces. If you can see 3 pieces of wood you glue together, and you turn the inside first, you break it apart, put it back together, and then you do the outside. This is certified olive wood from Bethlehem, Israel. And the top and the bottom are holly, so it's a perfect story. The holly represents the birth of Christ.
Okay.
And this is actually from the land and the town where he was born. This is a piece of blue beech from the Conservancy down Lancaster. This is and again, you can see the grain. It's really pretty. And what's interesting about it is the grain goes horizontal and vertical. Really easy to turn. Very nice to turn. Nice finish on it. And that's just a cherry finial on it. You know, people ask me, how long does it take me to make an ornament? From beginning to end, it takes me now about an hour and a half just to turn both finials, the body, hollow the body. You know, about an hour and a half. It used to take me, and I shouldn't tell you this, 45 minutes. But I can't do that anymore. It's just, again, for beginning wood turners, excellent project because again, they spindle turning, and it's, you know, you can scrape or you can cut. You know, you can do some grooves, some rounding, and this is, I put a tag on it. It says, "Here's the scoop." It says, to preserve my finish for years to come, wash me by hand when the dipping is done. This is a piece of sugar maple, and this is pretty special to me because it came from, in our family, we have 2 family cemeteries up near Madisonburg, Pennsylvania, near 14 miles east of State College. And this came down from a tree in that cemetery. And you can see it was cut. It wasn't cut by me. I got the piece, and that's the saw edge, natural edge. But the flame again on it is just incredible. There's, again, for beginning wood turners, here's an excellent wood for them to turn, sycamore. Real incredible, easily turned. That's from This is from the Demuth Tobacco Shop in Lancaster. Piece of spalted beech.
That beech tree there.
Yeah, this is an urn that I did. And I'll show you how to create or make a mistake look decent. This is the top. And when I drilled the hole for the finial on the top, I wasn't watching my depth. Drilled through, so I put a little button on the inside. This is spalted swamp birch. Again, a piece that a friend gave me, which turned out pretty nice. I left this sit maybe for a month out on the pile that you just saw, and you'll see the spalting that started to take place just within a month under the tarp. Yeah, white mulberry. Mulberry is, again, another one of my favorite woods to turn. It's really easy to turn. In fact, it's the first bowl, not this one, I have another one. First bowl I turned from start to finish without a piece of abrasive paper on it, with a finish. This is shea seed and flaxseed oil. And
Good job.
what's nice about it, again, from a utilitarian person, flaxseed and shea seed oil, you can actually ingest and it's not going to hurt you at all. So I put it on my cutting boards, anything that's going to be in contact with food. I use it, and you can also refresh it just by putting another coat on it, Now that one wasn't buffed. If you buff it, it will get as shiny as a bowl.
Absolutely.
Spalted Norway maple. That's from the Stauffer Mansion. That was an anniversary gift to my wife. The first lathe I bought was in 1968. But then there's, some other things got in the road. I got drafted out of college. And then when I came back, I went back to college, went to work and worked down in Virginia. So I didn't have a place or a facility to turn. And it wasn't until about 2007, 2006 that I really started back again. And what I knew and what I learned prior to that, I had the first person that taught me how to turn was Paul Eshelman. And Paul was mostly a scraper, not totally, but mostly a scraper. And that's how, and again, when you're teaching beginning wood turners, and again in classes, we didn't have that long of time to turn a piece because we had 2 lathes for 24 students. I built grandfather clocks, I built mantle clocks, I built steeple clocks, and I sold them to jewelry stores down here in South Central Pennsylvania. I've done some reproduction stuff as well. Again, if somebody wants something done, I'll do it. But right now I turn because it's much more relaxing for me. When you do custom furniture or versus wood turning, from start to finish, it's much quicker in wood turning. And, at this stage in my life, that satisfaction is more gratifying. I'm like a child.